Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting conversation. It's from the Joe Rogan Experience, featuring the current FBI Director Kash Patel.
That's right. We've gone through this, well, a pretty extensive interview, and our goal here is really to pull out the key takeaways for you.
Yeah, help you understand what he's saying is going on inside the FBI, the big threats he sees, and, his perspective on some of these major controversies we've all heard about.
Exactly. We'll look at his priorities, the challenges he laid out, and his specific take on events. It's all about understanding these complex things through his lens, based on what he shared in that specific talk.
Okay, so let's unpack it. He became director back in February 2025. His background is pretty varied: public defender, prosecutor, senior roles in past administrations.
And his first impression, leading the FBI, he actually said, completely effing wild.
Right. But the wild part, according to him, wasn't just how tough the job was.
No, what seemed to surprise him was how fast he felt they could actually make changes. He said he got buy-in from veteran agents, people he felt wanted these shifts years ago.
Interesting. So how does he see his role then?
Well, he kind of frames it as, give the agents the tools they need, then step back.
Yeah.
He suggested previous leadership maybe got in the way.
Okay. And one of the first things he talked about was moving people.
Yeah, moving agents, intelligence analysts, out of the D.C. area, the National Capital Region, the NCR.
So he threw out a number, didn't he? Like a third of the workforce.
Something like that. 11,000 out of 38,000 people. Huge concentration there. And he mentioned promotions often required being in the NCR.
And he's moving, 1,500 of them?
That's the number he gave.
Yeah.
Moving them out to the field offices. His logic, as he put it, was pretty straightforward. Crime isn't just happening within 65 miles of D.C.
Right. He gave examples like a single agent making a huge difference preventing a homicide in Indian country or stopping fentanyl somewhere like Texas or Arkansas.
Yeah, putting people where the problems actually are, basically. Decentralizing.
Okay, so decentralization. Then he shifted pretty hard into the fentanyl crisis.
Yeah. Called it one of the things he really wants to hammer down on.
The stats he cited were grim. U.S. government numbers.
100,000 overdose deaths a year? That's, one every 7 minutes?
Devastating. And he mentioned other stats, too: child rape, homicides.
Right, and then he posed the question, with 38,000 employees, where is everybody? It sounded like a call to focus resources.
So where does he trace the root of the fentanyl problem to?
He was absolutely clear on this. The precursors, the basic ingredients, come from mainland China, the CCP.
Even though China denies making fentanyl itself.
Right. His point was they supply all the ingredients and shift them out. He even mentioned they announced stopping one precursor.
But there are others.
He said there are like 14 others they still ship.
So what's the FBI doing about it under him?
He described standing up a massive enterprise to go after these Chinese precursor companies directly.
But the suppliers adapt, don't they?
Exactly. He said now they're seeing precursors shipped elsewhere, first places like India, maybe Canada, the Vancouver route he mentioned. Then the fentanyl gets made there for global distribution.
Why the shift?
He attributed it partly to the U.S. getting better at stopping it coming across the southern border.
And his overall view on why China is doing this, he connected it to something bigger, right?
Yeah, he shared his opinion pretty strongly that the CCP is using fentanyl deliberately against the U.S., like a long-term plan.
A plan to do what?
To kneecap the country, as he put it. By targeting young people, the ones who might join the military, become cops, teachers. He sees it as a national security threat, not just a drug issue.
Wow. So what are the counter efforts? Sanctions, intel sharing?
All of the above.
Huh.
Working with treasuries on sanctions, coordinating with the Five Eyes partners, that's us, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, sharing intelligence, asking them to help shut down factories.
And Mexico, the cartels.
Right. Yeah, working with the Mexican government, too, because the cartels are obviously involved in the distribution and adapting their methods.
He also stressed how it actually gets to users, didn't he? It's not always pure fentanyl.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
He highlighted the fake pills, making stuff look like OxyContin, but it's laced with fentanyl. Or even making drugs look like candy, gummy bears.
Aimed at kids.
That's the implication, leading to accidental overdoses. He said a big part of his job is educating Americans about this root cause, the precursors from China.
And he mentioned working with India now, too.
Yeah, trying to find and shut down companies there that are getting these precursors. He called it a global problem that basically exploded because, in his view, nobody did anything for 4 years.
Okay, that leads into his critique of past priorities, then.
Right. He talked about why he thinks problems like this got so bad.
From his national security viewpoint, how does he classify something like fentanyl?
Unquestionably a Tier 1 threat, a national security crisis. I mean, 100,000 deaths a year, it's hard to argue with that framing.
And his criticism of the previous administration?
He argued that the last administration did not classify the drug trafficking enterprise as a prime threat. He felt they shifted focus
To things like
climate change, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. He presented these as political priorities that, in his view, pulled resources away from core threats like drugs and violent crime.
He contrasted that with the end of the Trump administration, where he was chief of staff at DOD.
Yeah, he claimed they handed over a playbook focused on Iran, counterterrorism, hostages, narcotics. He said they hoped the next team would just continue it, calling it not a political issue.
He mentioned hostages specifically.
He did. He claimed they brought back over 50 hostages and detainees, saying it was more than previous administrations combined.
So what's his example of this politicization he perceived?
He pointed to the very first COANOP, the concept of operation, launched by the Biden DOD. He said it was on climate change.
And he sees that as politicizing national security.
That's how he framed it. He said he couldn't understand the motive, suggesting it wasn't incompetence, but intentional decisions by smart people to politicize things, maybe for press, book deals, who knows? That was his speculation.
He also brought up the media's role in all this.
Yeah, he characterized some media as having a hatred for President Trump and claimed they didn't give credit for things like hostage rescues, but instead pushed disinformation.
And he alleged that the incoming administration deliberately didn't continue some policies.
Right. He claimed they stopped things because they were Trump policies, even if they were working, to avoid giving credit.
And he connects this politicization to specific failures.
Yes, he used the example of Secretary Austin not telling the president he was hospitalized. Patel called that a serious breach of the National Command Authority, that vital chain of command, especially with things like the nuclear codes.
Okay, so that sets the stage for him diving into some major past controversies. He often ties them back to this idea of weaponization and disinformation.
Exactly. Let's start with Russiagate.
How did he describe the origins of that?
His account was, it started with a political party buying fake foreign intelligence from a foreign source, funded by donations. Then, he claims, they took that info to the FBI to get surveillance on the Trump campaign.
And he alleged misconduct by the FBI itself?
Yes. He alleged they lied to the FISA court, the secret court that approved surveillance warrants. He claimed they left out information that might have cleared Trump and used media leaks, he says, came from FBI leadership to justify the warrant.
His conclusion on Russiagate?
He called it a coordinated conspiracy to take down your political opponent by weaponizing government. Strong words.
He seemed frustrated that the narrative persists.
Very much so. Said half of America still believes it, in his view, because of years of media coverage. He mentioned when he took his job in Congress investigating this, the deal was they'd release whatever they found, good or bad.
He sees changing public perception as the hard part now.
Yeah, a harder lift than just uncovering the information, as he put it.
What about accountability for those involved?
He said his focus now is exposure, not prosecution, as he's not in charge of that. He mentioned the statute of limitations, usually 5 years, for things like lying in the process, could be an issue.
Though maybe conspiracy charges could extend that.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
He noted that possibility.
Then he mentioned finding, like, a hidden room.
Yeah, quite the claim. A room in the Hoover building, supposedly hidden by past leadership, full of documents and drives they're now reviewing.
He gave an example from those documents.
Yes, involving Nellie Orr, whose husband was a DOJ official connected to Christopher Steele. He claimed documents they found, which he says the FBI hid, show her giving her husband info related to Trump-Russia, contradicting her sworn testimony to Congress where she denied working with him on it.
Lying to Congress is a felony, right?
It is. But he noted the statute of limitations on that specific instance is likely run out.
He also claimed people involved in Russiagate were rewarded.
That was his word. He pointed to Andy McCabe, the former deputy director, mentioned the alleged plan to wire Trump the campaign donations to McCabe's wife from Clinton-linked sources.
McCabe was fired, but then...
Patel says the Biden administration let him retire with full benefits, and now he's a commentator on CNN.
And Peter Strzok.
Same thing. Former head of counterintel, involved in the investigation, controversial texts. Patel noted he's also on CNN now.
He seemed to think they got away with it.
Yeah, and he also took a shot at media outlets that won Pulitzers for reporting he claims was later proven wrong. He attributed finding evidence to, in his view, their arrogance in writing things down.
Okay, shifting gears. Jeffrey Epstein, what was his take?
Well, he acknowledged the public anger about that first sweetheart plea deal. He highlighted that the Trump administration later investigated and indicted Epstein.
But Epstein's death, suicide or something else?
Patel shared his personal belief, based on his background, around jails, segregated housing. He thinks it was suicide. He called the idea of someone getting murdered in that specific high-security isolation setting fiction.
But he acknowledged other experts disagree.
He did. He mentioned Dr. Michael Baden, the pathologist who looked at the autopsy. Baden pointed to things like the hyoid bone fracture being, in his view, more common in strangulation than suicide hanging.
So a war of experts, as Patel put it.
Exactly, though the official ruling was suicide.
What about the jail video footage? There were reports of issues, right? Malfunctions, erased tapes.
Yeah, he acknowledged those reports, even from Epstein's first suicide attempt. He said his administration have footage now. They're reviewing everything very carefully.
And they plan to release it.
He said they'll release everything we have and can,
Yeah.
emphasizing transparency, even if the footage seems mundane.
Then there's the speculation about video from Epstein's island. Videos of powerful people.
Right. He addressed that directly. He said they've reviewed video they obtained legally through search warrants connected to the case.
And did they find anything showing felonies by prominent people?
He was emphatic.
Yeah.
If such video existed showing felonies, they would open cases immediately. He said they're reviewing everything they have.
But he also cautioned about releasing certain things.
Yeah, stressed they can't re-victimize the women involved by releasing footage of their abuse. He also pointed out, videos could have been made and destroyed years ago.
He encouraged people with real info to come forward.
Yes, like flight manifests, tail numbers, actual evidence, not just rumors.
Okay, what other past events did he touch on? The Hunter Biden laptop.
Oh, yeah. He called that the ultimate weaponization and total disinformation combining forces. Big claim.
What was his specific allegation?
He claimed the FBI knew the laptop was real, knew it was being investigated, but stayed silent publicly. And then, just before the election, 51 former intel officials signed that letter calling it Russian disinformation.
He connected some of those officials to Russiagate.
He did. And he claimed the CIA director at the time okayed the letter's release super fast, like 8 hours, even though Patel alleges they knew it was false. He linked it directly to wanting Biden to win.
And he says those officials still stand by the letter.
Apparently so, according to Patel, even after years of work to show it was false.
What about January 6th?
His account there was that President Trump had authorized 10,000 to 20,000 National Guard troops before the event.
Authorized them, but they weren't deployed initially.
Right. Patel claims the offer went to D.C. Mayor Bowser and Speaker Pelosi, and they declined it in writing. He said it took years and money to prove that, but documents eventually backed it up.
Any mention of ongoing investigations related to Jan 6th?
Yeah, he mentioned looking into possible agent provocateurs, people stirring things up, and he said they're doubling down on the pipe bomb investigation near the RNC-DNC, claimed the bomb wasn't actually activated, which is why it didn't go off.
And briefly, the White House cocaine incident.
Called it wild, said they're investigating methodically. But he contrasted the, let's say, muted public reaction and lack of suspects compared to how he thinks it might have played out under a different administration.
Okay, so that's a lot of looking back. What does he say this all means for the FBI now? What's the mission under his leadership?
3 main things, really. Expose what he believes happened in the past, put measures in place to prevent future weaponization, and rebuild public trust.
He acknowledged it's tough, facing pushback himself.
Yeah, mentioned things like swatting attempts against him, subpoenas. He framed it as, catching bad guys is the day job, but fixing the institution is the bigger win long term.
So what are the specific priorities or investigations he highlighted?
He listed the core missions: Constitution, Homeland Defense, crushing violent crime, and using rigorous congressional oversight to help restore trust.
But specific cases. He mentioned the Catholic memo.
Right. So they exposed this memo, actually multiple memos from multiple offices, he claimed, from the previous FBI admin, that allegedly targeted Catholics as potential domestic terrorists, using sources like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
What else? Fauci's phones?
Yeah, so they worked with Senators Paul and Kennedy and recently found phones and devices Fauci used during COVID. They plan to review them for info on COVID origins. He called finding them a win for the public.
Operation Not Forgotten, what was that?
A big operation over the summer focused on unsolved crimes in Indian country trafficking, murder, violent crime. He said they sent extra agents and analysts out there after meeting with tribal leaders who asked for more help.
Targeting terrorists who entered the U.S.
TST's known or suspected terrorists. He said they're actively targeting them, doing raids with DHS. Claimed over 10,000 arrests in his first 100 days, though that number likely includes various immigration and criminal arrests during those joint ops.
Any big fugitive captures?
He highlighted nabbing 3 from the world's top 10 most wanted list recently, including, he said, the alleged Abbey Gate bomber from the Afghanistan withdrawal.
And that agro-terrorism case.
Yeah, the researcher arrested, her husband indicted in China, for allegedly bringing in a harmful mushroom pathogen. He used it as an example of how adversaries attack on multiple fronts, not just drugs or cyber, but agriculture too. Billions in potential damage, he said.
Is he claiming these new approaches are working? Seeing results?
He cited projections for a significant drop in the murder rate, maybe the lowest in decades, down 20% so far this year.
What does he attribute that to?
His policy of let good cops be cops, giving them resources and taking the politics out of it, in his view. Oh, and he mentioned changing the agent fitness test, the PFT, to make sure agents can physically handle situations.
Did he mention other national security concerns like land purchases?
Yeah. Foreign adversaries buying land near military bases. Called it insane, a vulnerability. Noted some states are trying to pass laws against it. He connected it to the broader issue of adversaries exploiting America's openness, like maybe placing nationals in research roles to gather intelligence.
How does he deal with ongoing media criticism?
He talked about that challenge. Said some outlets rely on leaks, anonymous sources push narratives, claimed they sometimes attack the Bureau even for changes agents wanted, like cutting back on morning briefings.
He sounded pretty critical of some media outlets.
Very. Use phrases like intentionally false, claimed they cripple the country. By platforming critics he feels suffer from derangement syndrome against Trump associates. He suggested some outlets prioritize platform over truth, even if it hurts their ratings or finances.
So his message is the FBI is focused elsewhere now.
Exactly. He stressed his focus, the FBI's focus under him, is homeland defense, stopping kids dying from fentanyl, getting justice for victims. He contrasted that sharply with priorities he saw dominating in the past.
Does he think they're winning against the critics?
He seemed to think so. So the public sees the truth in their actions, the results. Pointed to things like labeling the Denver Molotov attack or the D.C. embassy shooting as terrorism based on facts, not politics.
So rebuilding credibility is key.
Absolutely. He acknowledged the Bureau's reputation took a hit because of a few in leadership, as he put it. But he feels they're earning trust back, especially in his first 100 days, by just focusing on the mission and being transparent with Congress and the public, letting the work speak for itself.
Okay, so that was quite a deep dive into the FBI world, according to Director Patel, based on that Rogan interview. We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. From internal changes like moving agents to the huge focus on fentanyl as a national security issue.
To his perspective on these really charged historical events, Russiagate, Epstein, January 6th.
Yeah, and how he often links those to his ideas about political weaponization and disinformation. Plus, we got a glimpse into current priorities, the Catholic Memo Review, agro-terrorism, Operation Not Forgotten.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. I mean, the sheer scope of the issues, the controversies, and his very clear determination to tackle them his way. Exposing the past seems key to his strategy for the future.
Right. And that really brings up a question for you, the listener, to chew on. We live in this age of just constant information, often conflicting stories. How do you sort through it all? How do you decide what rings true?
And what role does hearing directly from someone in a key position like this, understanding their stated priorities, their experiences, their framing play in how you form your own informed view?
It's a crucial question.
Definitely something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some valuable insights, some things to think more about regarding these really critical issues.